Yeah.
And these are really directional, like, so probably if we do like question and answer or anything like that, we might pick questions just so they can come up on the screen. Switch that back up to me, so that's cool. Right, okay. So, I can find these. Really exciting. I'm really excited anyway, because like I said, first event we've had here in over 2 years, for obvious reasons. Yeah, I don't know what to say really. I mean, we're going to hopefully entertain and amaze you this afternoon with some interesting, somewhat niche poetry. Housekeeping, toilets behind postcards. If there's a fire or the fire alarm goes off, we're not expecting it to go off. It's back out where we came in. I believe there's fire exits through there, but I don't know if they're open, so back out the way we came in. We're not having refreshments for this event because of COVID and everything. And we do have, we're going to keep the door open unless massive noise comes in, but we do have super ventilation, so if we do have to shut the door, we've got good ventilation. That's about it, I think, as far as that goes. So, we've organised it so that we're doing 3 short sets each. So I'm going first, then Sonja will just swapping, and we'll have a short break after the 3rd set. But no drinks, I'm sorry. I didn't want to get the wine in the bottleneck then. I know, right? So, and because Sonja's last poem is a really brilliant one to end on, I'm going first. It's not anything other than that. So, I got really interested in digital poetry when I saw it online. Images and adding music to the poem. And when I did my MA in creative writing for my dissertation, I decided to look at what you could do just with text without adding images or music, no multimedia, just with text, on the basis that the poems are the words and the words are the poems. And I came up with quite a few sort of interesting aspects of what you could do on a screen with the text that you can't do on the page. So you can make it move, you can make it get bigger and smaller, you can make it change colour, you can make it do random things, you can have interaction, so I'm going to ask you to interact with some of my poems, just for fun. You can, what else can you do? It's more kind of ephemeral, because if, for instance, you have a randomly generated poem that does things in a random order, you're never going to see that poem again. So that's an interesting aspect of it. Whether it's a good aspect of it or not, I haven't decided. But we'll see what you think. I've got examples of pretty much all of those things in here. Right, so the collection is called Everything is Pieces of Itself. It includes some poems relating to quantum theory, some poems relating to depression and mental illness, some poems relating to autism. Yeah, anyway, we'll see how it goes. So the first one's called Matryoshka. Matryoshka is Russian dolls, in case you didn't know. So you open one up and there's another one inside. The reason this appealed to me was because when I wrote it, or before I wrote it, I'd gone through a period of quite severe depression, and I spent a lot of my time just masking how I was feeling. So I was like the inside doll inside all these other dolls. And I was really, really busy at the time, and my notebooks all look like that. And those stars mean that's something I've got to do, that's something I've got to follow up, and they all look like that. And I'd fill pages and pages in a day, so it just got utterly ridiculous. So let's see the poem. Okay. Shiny day, I greet you. How are you? I'm fine. Busy, so much to do before the sun hurries away. I put my best smile forward. Can't stop to chat, got another meeting. What did you say? How awesome is that? I write it down on the one blank page in my idea stuff notebook where a cosmos of ringed stars marks things I have to do. My calendar overflows, no time to update, too much to do. Ideas prowl around the fire inside my head, starving wolves hunting for a feast. Stars leak from my idea stuff notebook. When will I find time to sweep the floor? Shadows shed behind me, so much to achieve before the sun slips away and I can drink wine. I don't remember the last time I laughed, but I can't stop smiling. Wine drunk, me drunk, and determined sleep won't creep up on me. Just one more email to write, just one more. Stars leak from my idea-stuffed head, burn up in the shadows behind me. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever laugh again. I catch a falling star. Oh fuck, I forgot I said I'd do that. Sleep won't creep up on me. All I want to do is sleep forever. The end. Done and dusted. I've decided. Bit dyslexic.
Just click to exit part on the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, mostly you just click the back to menu button and it comes back here. Yeah, that was part of the phone. Okay, so I don't know if any of you have ever been to a GP saying I feel a bit miserable. If you have, you'll have seen something like this idiot questionnaire where they say, have you felt any of this in the last 2 weeks? Sadness. I do not feel sad. I feel sad much of the time. I'm sad all the time. I'm so sad or unhappy I cannot stand it. Whenever they give me these things to fill in, I always end up writing all over them because the answers never quite fit what I want to say. And then they add the scores up and it's just complete sledgehammer to crack a very delicate walnut that completely squashes it on the head. So I thought I'd write my own version. And this is where you have to take part. Okay, depression inventory. Over the last 2 weeks, have you been bothered by any of the following problems? Choose the answer that most closely matches your experience. 1. Little interest or pleasure in doing things. So these are the options you've got. At sunset, an urban fox searched for small rodents in the wood shelter. It was so close you could almost brush its dusty coat. You laughed more than a tickled baby, more even than a tickling parent. Your merriment terrified the child. Hundreds of rabbits bounded for shelter despite your soft approach. You failed to capture them on video every time. 2 pigeons grumbled in a corner between lighthouse walls, obese, their feathers fluffed out against the snow. So which one should we choose?
I like the fox.
Top one.
I like the fox.
Oh, the fox, right, okay. Next question. Okay, so have you been feeling down, depressed or hopeless? Your stepdaughter called you by your name for the first time. You hoped this was the first breach in the wall she had built. You set a match to the fire. A heat barely crept beyond the hearthrug. You buried yourself in a blanket knitted by your wife. Playing poo sticks, your stick eddied under the bridge. It still circles among empty crisp packets and discarded underwear. The Christmas tree had a dusty cobweb cloak. A bedraggled angel was the only decoration, and the lights flickered off. So which one are we going to choose this time?
Yeah, definitely.
Trouble falling or staying asleep or sleeping too much? The jubilant dawn chorus awoke you. A poem sprang to life, seeped onto paper in the morning's stretched hours. At the wolf's hour, your brain spasmed, dreams sucking in all the world's devils. You scrambled out of sleep, breathless and peevish. Down on catnaps, damped your thoughts to pallid embers. All your misdeeds blistered into flames. Sleep sidestepped your pillow and crashed into your wardrobe. The uproar triggered a heartquake. Which one do we have?
I can relate to the last one.
Yeah. I think we're going to end up being depressed.
I think I've been there.
Okay, feeling bad about yourself, or that you are a failure, or have let yourself or your family down. These questions are all actually from text depression inventory. Your hands were chilblains, the axe was blunt. You made mountains of logs to thaw winter evenings. Your scattered mind couldn't comprehend the thermostat manual. All three sullen children were fattened by jumpers. A small black rabbit shivered under the brambles. You left it alone. It was dead the next day, eyes ripped out by crows. You crashed the car between home and vacation. You could see teeth through the gash in your son's cheek. Okay. I'm going to go for the gruesome one or more. Have you had any thoughts? You couldn't stop thinking about slamming your arm in the door, fracturing your radius, shattering your armour, following the agony. Standing on the cliff top, you thirsted for the salty rocks below. You didn't know how not to take a single step forward. Gosh. Loves it. I get it. Well, this is your prescription. At sunset, an urban fox searched for small rodents in the wood shelter. It was so close you could almost brush its dusky coat. Playing poo sticks, your stick eddied under the bridge. It still circles among empty crisp packets and discarded underwear. Sleep sidestepped your pillow and crashed into your wardrobe. The uproar triggered a heartquake. Your scattered mind couldn't comprehend the thermostat manual. All three sullen children were fattened by jumpers. You took a sharp knife to a piece of knotted ash. After hours of whittling, a love spoon was born. I like that.
Yeah.
It's really nice, feeling sad and then happy again at the end. That's really good. Thank you. Okay, right, I'll just get that back to the menu, and then it's Sonja's turn.
Okay.
So I'll get the slideshow.
Oh, I now have to remember where I ended the poems that are long and actually look at the screen. And I don't have enough hands.
I was supposed to introduce her, but I don't know very much. I'm afraid, so you're going to introduce yourself.
I write poetry about maths. I think that about sums it up.
Sorry, I didn't know that.
So, this first one is a very short, untitled poem, just as an introduction. Here is the soul of mathematics, presented in a glass. You take the glass and smash it, watching the shards fly through the air. And this next poem is called 4 + 4 = 8, or arithmetic. Arithmetic is the feeling in your fingers as you use them to count, the numbers running up your sleeve to find space in your head. Arithmetic is when patterns start to make no sense, even though you can see them right in front of your eyes because you're trying too hard. Arithmetic is what you're tested on when you're young. Arithmetic is how people choose if you're going to be good at maths. But really, it's the reason calculators were invented. Arithmetic is not the preoccupation of proper mathematicians like you and me. What we deal with is everything else, things that'd crack the screen of your calculator and make the buttons stick. What'll happen when a ball's hurled into the air? When will the next rain shower fall on East London? How many numbers can you add up before a fissure splits reality? What happens if you put a time bomb inside a formula? How to make a graph explode? And what happens when arithmetic won't behave? When information flits across the internet and when 4 plus 4 does not equal 8? And this next poem is, that's the wrong way, let's go that way, is a sort of reimagining of what it sometimes feels like to be learning maths in school. It's called A Trigonometric Invasion, or Tensine x/4. The school was nothing special, with its students, lessons and chewing gum plastered floors. Teachers bustled along corridors stressed and overworked as students pushed and shoved in their usual violent manner, not noticing the sign that hung above their heads, an ominous presence, a warning, waiting for the horrors to come. It was then that the invasion started. At 8:45 a.m. in Class 9C, it began with the attack of the hypotenuse. It came like a strutting major with the opposite and adjacent crawling in its wake, the slime in a slug's trail, causing the student stampede of ignorance to increase to a thunderous roar of ignorance. That's not right, anyway. Then, in a flurry, the exact values arrived. Gyrating in a howling mass of pi and square roots, although they could be deadly quiet, sneaking up on an unsuspecting student on tiptoe before jumping with a howling screech to turn the memory to putty so they can embed themselves in it for the rest of time. Then came the rules, sine and cosine, brass buttons shining, boots gleaming, stamping their feet in time to the tune of a muted sine wave, making the ground below their feet tremble and the teachers cower. The orders they barked severed the air like the line in a fraction. The students scattered, running from the non-right-angled triangle rules. As though the confusion were a cry on the wind, the identities came, black and hooded like riders from the pits of hell brought to impose ones and squares on the minds of the innocent and unburdened. Their faces swayed in shadow as they swept down corridors, trailing cobwebs of certainty that left no room for laughter. Finally, the double-angled formula arrived, falling upon the school like A's and B's of molten rock spewing from an erupting volcano. Bullets ricocheted off the walls as they charged, a fearsome horde of cries that burned the faces of everyone they touched, with a fear of mistakes, with expanded angles and exploded minds. Things began to fall, students and teachers and stones as they tried to escape from what seemed an avalanche of endless questions. Their rate of change of displacement began to increase, causing negative signs to cascade from previously unmoving places as they were differentiated and integrated back again. No one was left to fight. Teachers crouched trembling at the void where they knew knowledge should be. They'd given up hope. The invasion was over. Ruthless with success and tired of misunderstandings, the identities, ratios, quotient diagrams and rules set about finishing their task, burning what remained of the children's minds. Thank you. Oh, I've moved one too far. Apologies. So, as you can see from that, the syllables per line follows the formula that's in the title. So, yeah. This next poem is called Pi, and it's about pi, which is the ratio between the circumference and diameter of a circle, and it's 3.14159. You will learn what the rest of it is, as you can see. Pi. Right here, pi 3 point is 1, following you 4, the 1 shadow in your eye 5, the twitch in your fingers, the rhythm 9 of your 2 breath. Pi is watching you 6, calculating you 5, even a 3, recluse on the top 5 of a peak, or the middle of 8, a jungle finds themselves faced with pi 9, perhaps as a rainbow arcs 7 across the sky and drops fall to earth 9, pooling in 3, never 2, ending pi 3. It is sneering at you, all its 8 irrational 4 digits laughing at the 6 structure 2 of your DNA, the 6 double helix 4 that defines 3 you, defined 3 by it. Pi spirals out with the 8 ticking of 3 o'clock 2. A procession of numbers, 7 marching out to every corner of 9, the universe. From 5, 0, the earth, 2, below your feet to the sun, the 8 star that will expand and engulf 8 you and your world, 4 in 1, a bubble of 4/3 pi r cubed. Not move that on, sorry. 9. There is no way to retreat. 7. Pi 1 will swarm on to infest 6, the remains of the solar system. 9. The Milky Three-Way, it reaches the multitude of 9 galaxies that exist beyond. Pi 9 is there. 3. In the formation of new stars. 7. The decaying of 5 suns. 1, 0 in supernovas. 5. On this planet, populated. 8 by things. 2, 0 that live and die. Pi breathes into the 9 statistics. Chaos and chance flap. 7 their wings in time. 4 with pi. There, in the corner of your 9 iris, stretching for its infinite 4 transcendental and 5 irrational digits, feeling the 9 atoms. 4 vibrating. 3, 0 with my poem. Can you see 7 it right here? Pi is following 8 u. 1, 6, 4, 0. That's the end of it. There we go. And we could go on forever, but I did decide to stop the poem. This next poem the title is The Wave Equation, which is used to describe waves. And it's called A Vibrating String. Differential equations curl around my head, making my eardrums vibrate. Fingers at piano keys, equations of motion form and die with the end of the phrase. A violin bow on string, permutations dance through the air along repeated rhythms. Pi winding round and round my head, wave equations expand and explode. With a reed under currents of breath, formula spiral at the end of a bell. Thank you. And I will pass back to Pippa. I have notes on mine.
Okay, so I've got a couple now which are called under the heading of complexity. They're actually not that complex, and they're both generated from page poems that I thought, I could do something interesting with this. So the first one is Rebirth as Quantum Mechanic. Now that's the page poem. You don't need to read it, it's just showing you how it's laid out. But because of the layout and the fact that it's 6 different sections, I thought I could do interesting things with this. Let's see what happens. So that's the basic poem, and I've got lots of little side tracks that you can go down, and there's other links in it as well which go in strange places. And I haven't learned to root through it, so we'll see what happens. Rebirth of the Quantum Mechanic. 1. Touch. I trace a line along my arm. I shiver. Fine hairs rise up, pulling at my skin. The senses of finger touching arm and arm touched by finger cannot be separated. Yet the two have never made contact, cannot make contact. We can never touch anything until we redefine the word touch. It's the weak nuclear force which holds ink to paper. Maybe that's why my words don't. I chase thistledown across a car park. It's easier to catch. 2. Wave particle duality. Is light a wave or a particle? This is the wrong question. The right question is, what is light? I know how fast it is moving, swiftly, but not where it is. The problem, one can't. I cast around me for a familiar sound. 3. Curiosity. How could I not yearn to fold my mind around a world where particles are smaller than the smallest they can be, and nothing behaves the way I know it should? How could my questions not crumple into the vast spaces between the nucleus of every atom and its electron shells? Schrodinger's cat did not escape the box, therefore we deduce it isn't. A cat creeps slowly, hunting a sparrow. 4. Electrons. Words pull out the wrong notions. Electrons spin. They behave as if they spin, but they don't. They can't. Electrons are particles. They're wave functions, defining where you might find them. Electrons jump from shell to shell. This leap does not ever pass through the in-between. Without understanding, impossible to reach, it's easy to say they shouldn't. Imagine a cat or a dog catching thistledown. 5. The electromagnetic interaction. Rest your head on my shoulder, wrap both arms around me, breathe a kiss on my lips. It stops just short of touching. The electrons of your molecules repel the electrons of mine. Inside atoms, between molecules, the weight of the air on your skin. Is a kiss a wave or a particle or both? Sometimes I'm glad I don't know. Cats and dogs don't kiss, except in our minds. How does that notion arise? 6. Now. As I breathe, I question the air. How do you, empty space made up of more empty space, push my lungs outwards? If I see a cat in a box, I wonder, how does light, something that cannot be imagined, project you into my mind? When I embrace my children, I ask, how can we feel when we can never touch each other's warmth? That's the beginning. There are many different routes through that. I've just chosen the one. Okay, so this one I don't have to do an enormous amount of work for because it kind of plays itself. So, this is a poem which I shall read to you. I am an information trap. Information flares out the way sun emits plasma, a blustering wind of charged particles. When I'm shiny, I can soothe it. In my eyes and my ears, funnel it into my motor cortex. My pen meets paper, closes the circuit, plugs my hippocampus in to charge with new memories. The marks I lay down are almost irrelevant. I doodle, I remember. I set light to my notes, still I remember. Even in ash, the marks are permanent. Right, so what I've done with this poem is, when I started playing, there's several words in there that are going to change in a random order. And it's going to end up a new poem, but in between it's going to be this sort of ephemeral random poem that you'll never see again. Incredibly unlikely to see again, even if you play it goodness knows how many times. The way I've set it up is the word that's going to change will go red, then it will change, and it will stay red briefly. So I'm going to start it playing, and I want you to kind of watch it and try and think about how the word changing changes the poem itself. This is kind of like a lecture on history, poetry, and stuff. So, let's see if it'll work. photons, a meandering eddy of indifferent sunlight. When I'm dull, I can't catch it with any sense, can't funnel it into my lunatic wits. My pen seeks paper, short circuits, melts my hippocampus so it can't charge any memories. The marks I scatter are beyond irrelevant. I doodle, I disperse. I set light to my memories, still I forget. Even illuminated, the marks are invisible. There's the starting part there. I really enjoyed that. Okay, 5-minute break now, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. Short break. Or we can carry on if you like. A short break. I think my mic's been off the whole time.
You can always edit the live stream before putting it up.
I'm probably going to have to do that anyway because I don't think
It won't pick up the project.
pick up well enough.
No.
It'd be good to have.
Although it means it'll see a different poem.
Yeah. Switch off. It must have been switched on when Rachel told me to switch it on, so I switched it on.
Maybe.
That was genius, wasn't it?
Mine seems to be on, at least the blue light's on.
Yeah, I noticed your blue light was on. I thought I must look at mine, and then I got sidetracked. Your poem's amazing. Even better read out. The school one is like Donald Barthel's story. He wrote a story about a couple of stories, I think, about mad things happening in school.
I don't think I've read any of those.
It's kind of along those lines. I think it's better.
Yeah, I had the idea while I was revising trigonometry for an exam and I was very cross. I didn't obviously write it then because I was revising. I think you can do it. I think we're pretty on schedule. I don't know. Maybe we're not. It doesn't really matter.
Being alive, staying alive. Human, this one, and a subset of being alive.
You missed that. I'm just I like photographs to capture people's expression. It's not always necessarily the most flattering photos in the world.
But they're always
Yeah. Yeah, we can people down.
Someone's still in the loo. Yeah. Disgrace.
There'll be a recording of some sort on our YouTube channel. I have my mic switched off and all of the first half.
See ya.
Okay.
Or maths.
Back on.
My mic was not turned off, thank you. This poem is about, I don't know, learning about stuff. It's called 611 over 4,500, which is 0.13757 recurring, which is the number of syllables per line. The numbers burst and shimmer in front of your eyes for a moment, then flicker into darkness. Synapses send electric sparks travelling through your eyes into your brain, moving from apples, beads and toes to symbols and lines on a page. Somersaulting through your mind, the numbers become constructs in your head, somehow more than potatoes or people, more than grains of sand or specks of dust. Slowly they settle in your skull and start to expand. You begin to divide cake and pizza and meaningless circles on useless pieces of paper. They start to sing, and fractions come raining down, again and again pouring into your eyes and ears till you can never quite get the sound of them from your eardrums. But somewhere along the way, perhaps on a rainy day, the dancing comes to a halt, and the integers, dragging fingers, thumbs and oranges, hide in all the forgotten recesses of your neurons as some poor, well-meaning person tries to teach you decimals. The ones that go on and on in your head until they've pressed words to the very edge of your mind, and even the fractions are having trouble singing. And at last, when the multitude dies down and the integers dare raise their heads again, and decimals are understood or limited to finite decimal places, to be pressed aside and forgotten, till the pressure builds, the fear grows, and a real number escapes and wreaks havoc, knocking over sentences, scatters memories, and leaves only a fear of numbers that'll grow. Oblivious to what they're missing, this person will not experience the joys of imaginary numbers, patterns that jump and spiral high above the heavens, and the most elegant proofs that pick their way across the mind dressed in robes of simple understanding. And then there's infinity, that despite its size can be pressed into a little pearl box to be taken out on special occasions to admire. A mind with a fear of maths misses out on all these things and more, much more. And this next poem is one I wrote to annoy my friend because she really liked astrophysics and absolutely hated proof by mathematical induction. So this is called The Sum from I equals 1 to n of I is n times n plus 1 over 2, where n is in the natural numbers, or the universe is an inductive step. Let Pn be the proposition that you stand at the window. The sum from I equals 1 to n of I is n times n plus 1 over 2. Some paper in your hand, you do not, basis case, look at it. Instead, you left-hand side, the sum from I equals 1 to 1 of I is 1. Look out, up past the moon, the stars all moving away from you. Right-hand side, 1 times 1 plus 1 over 2 is 1. You imagine the sky, burning with red shift, then you look down at the paper. Therefore, P1 is true. In your hand, you think that induction came from inductive step, an explosion. It was like the Big Bang. It was, assume pk is true, all contained in an infinitely dense point until the sum from pi equals 1 to k of I is k times k plus 1 over 2. Somebody began to explain. Then it exploded with, consider pk plus 1, shrapnel of symbols and letters and positive integers. The sum from I equals 1 to k plus 1 of I equals the sum from I equals 1 to k of I plus k plus 1. It's not stopped expanding since, and the integers mock every k times k plus 1 over 2 plus k plus 1 misunderstanding until you feel as if there's nothing else left. Half k times k plus 1 plus 2 times k plus 1 in your mind. But the base and inductive steps, although sometimes you can half k plus 1 times k plus 2 equals k plus 1 times k plus 1 over 2. Forget about it. Stop wondering where it all came from. Then you look back out. Therefore, pk plus 1 is true, at the stars or back down at the piece of paper in your hand, the questions begin. Completion, again. Something was there before it came, although no one can remember what it was. P1 is true, and assuming pk is true, then pk plus 1 is also true. Therefore, by the principle of mathematical induction, Pn is true. Thank you. So, I don't know who understood that, but proof by mathematical induction is the idea that if you have something that's true over all positive whole numbers, you can prove it's true for 1 and 2, and then if you assume it's true for another random number and prove it's true for the next one, it will be true for all numbers. Because you've proved it's true for 1 and 2, therefore it's true for 3 and 4 and 5, and so on. And yeah, it's got a nice little proof in it. This next one, staying in the theme of number theory, is called 383 mod p, where p is prime, or prime numbers. Prime numbers. A creak, a moan and disorder rains down. Numbers without end seeming to follow no rules, just poking their heads up long enough to create the illusion of pattern, then simply disappearing again. The building blocks of all mathematics. Everything is made up of these numbers. Large and small, however predictable they seem on the surface, prime numbers lurk beneath, veiled, keeping themselves to themselves, until finite rings emerge, almost by accident. An arithmetical mistake. A mistake where prime numbers bring order, not chaos. Quotient groups, modulo n. As the prime numbers swarm forward, the rings become fields, complete with multiplicative inverses for every element. Identities spring up with smiles on their faces, but only when n is prime is there such order. Otherwise, all hell breaks loose. There are no more multiplicative inverses to let identities form, grow, and blossom. Equations that should be easy, with solutions wrapped in nice paper with ribbons, smell strange, or simply don't exist at all. So let's stay within the primes, stabbing blindly for the next one, knowing it's somewhere out in the darkness, almost hearing it laughing at us, as it just evades our grasp, and walking through number field ZP, where things are, breaking all the rules, predictable, nice, but such is the paradox of prime numbers, the building blocks of the universe, raining down from now till infinity. We just can't see where the next one will fall. And this poem is called Z belongs to the complex plane, 7 plus 8i. The imaginary part of Z is the poem because it has 8 syllables a line, or imaginary numbers. With you at my side, a sleeping function round your wrist, I look out at the realm of numbers. A plane disappearing in each of the 4 compass directions. See there, in the east, positive numbers clutter, trip, and right themselves with a laugh, hands clasping each other's shoulders. The sun hangs low in the sky. To the west, frost lies inch deep. You and I crackle through it. As the negative numbers recoil, averting their eyes, I take you by the hand and lead you northwards. Shapes swirl, lifting themselves on points, running, jumping, gently flowing. You rub your eyes, squinting into the dimness, trying to pick out the leaping shadows from the dancing imaginary numbers. Again, I lead you on, downwards, towards the negative imaginary numbers. All huddled around campfires, singing depressing songs into the gloom. Conjugates settle side by side, holding hands, swaying in time to the music. We leave them, travel back to the centre of the Argand diagram, where 0 crouches, hugging its knees. Then the function slithers from your wrist and stands up, roars its commands that cannot help but be obeyed. 0 winces as the first numbers slide into it, arms flailing. The subjective function screams louder. Even I am being pulled towards 0. The kernel presses around us. All my fingers, then my fingers are pulled from yours as you are hurled from the complex plane. For a fleeting moment, you see the realm of numbers spread out before you. Hot and cold meeting and churning steam as conjugates are separated and flung to different parts of the Argand diagram. Then your eyes open as the paper slips to the floor. The numbers fade back into your head. The world reinstates itself, hiding the purpose of numbers. This next poem, I think I didn't write out. You're just going to have to hear me and look at E. which is very pretty. I mean, look at it. So this is another irrational number, so it has numbers that go on without end, like pi, which also turns up in all sorts of random places all over maths for reasons, I'm not really sure why. So Euler's constant. Sitting in a maths classroom, you chew your pencil and stare at the question paper. E to the x equals 7, it says. Solve. And you yawn and fidget. Who cares? It's clearly irrelevant. Then everything is turned upside down. Lights flash, solidify, clustering together to form a sphere covered in green and blue. Thousands of lights that one by one are going out. Each one flickers and dies as electricity is pulled from the planet, one free electron at a time. You're falling down and down and see the ice caps of the mountains all frozen. The dry heat of deserts trapped as heat transfer fails, with the laws of thermodynamics collapsing in on themselves. You arrive at a city. Skyscrapers, historic buildings, council flats, all silent. Cars line the streets. Unmoving, and the people are gone. Without E, there is no way for blood to be pumped through the veins, for neurons to spark in the brain, no insects to dismantle the corpses. As you watch the buildings start to sag and disintegrate, implode along with everything else dependent on E. Everything. Now look down at the question. T to the x of E to the x. Solve, says the math sheet. You pick up your pencil, write, equals E to the x. Although what the exact relevance, that is, you're not sure. And it's back to you.
To me, okay. Okay, so where am I? I'm here. So the first two are just basically me reading along while the poem kind of plays itself. So this one, antimatter. I was really into quantum theory for a while. I'm just a little bit autistic, so I kind of get these special interests, and I have to admit I read Brief History of Time twice. It's all the way through, yeah. I even understood some of it, not a lot. Antimatter is kind of this weird stuff. It's matter composed of the antiparticles or partners of the corresponding particles in ordinary matter, whatever ordinary means. And this quote from Wikipedia kind of took my interest. Excited antihydrogen atoms are expected to glow the same colour as regular hydrogen. And for some reason that triggered this poem. I'll read it as it plays. I'm going to sit down so I can see the screen better. At home I decohere. My elements become entangled with the environment. Mother plus wife plus provider plus comforter plus peacemaker equals lost. I am anti-me. A woman turned inside out by reaching for what is beyond reach. Scattering skin, bone, muscle, gouts of blood, the stuff that makes me. From bedroom to kitchen, from home to school, to work, to school, to shops, to home. I check cupboards, fridge, Google a new recipe, start frying onion and garlic, chop carrots. What the hell is quinoa? Our youngest brawls with homework. I sweep the floor, try to reconstruct myself, drink a third glass of wine. In the lab, you play with the stuff that makes us all, joining pre-made particles. Antiproton plus positron equals antihydrogen. A simple hydrogen atom, turned on its head for the first time, trapped in a magnetic mesh. No cataclysmic rendezvous. Instead, a provocative laser begs for a quantum leap. One positron flashes between shells, stealing photons from the ultraviolet.
You measure what's gone. 2 lines on the spectrum. Time to start writing the paper. Nature should take it. Nobel Prize to follow. You battle with passive voice. Eventually come home to burnt dinner. What the hell is quinoa? What's that? I've never read this poem before. It was originally a paper poem, page poem, and there didn't seem a way of reading it, because the point of it is that one side gets smaller while the other side gets bigger, as it were. It's all kind of symbolic, but it kind of gave me a way of reading it, which I'm quite chuffed about. Okay, superior temporal gyrus. Everyone know what superior temporal gyrus is? Oh. It's the area of the brain which contains the auditory cortex. It's important for language comprehension, social cognition processes, insight-based problem solving. It's also thought to be one of the places where auditory processing disorder is caused. I don't know if you know about auditory processing disorder. It's a hearing disorder which isn't a hearing impairment, it's an understanding impairment. And it means that you struggle to make sense of sounds and make sense of words. You have problems with ordering of things, so if somebody gives you a list of steps to follow, you'll get them messed up, or you'll forget half of them, or and if there's a lot of noise around, you find it really hard to follow what someone's saying, all that sort of thing. And it's quite common among people with autism. I have it, I recently realised, but I just so totally have it. And yeah, this poem's sort of about that. Again, I'm reading along as it plays itself, and I was twiddling with the timings this morning, so apologies if they get a bit out of sync. Tonight, we're going to a party. You invited me the month before last. The glow of inclusion. I'll get to see friends. I haven't seen Sarah since 2016. Tonight, we're meeting at a party. You say it's easy to find. Walk towards town, turn right by the pub, take the 3rd left, 5th house on the right. That's what hearing things like that feels like in my head. Your instructions melt, spread in all directions. I ask you to draw a map. Okay, if I must. We're meeting at a party. I'd rather pull out my toenails. I remember now why I haven't seen Sarah. That time in the pub she said all chavs are scroungers. I called her on it. She went for me. You poured your pint over her, drowning ranted insults. I longed to spend the evening by the fire with a book. Tonight we're at a party. Voices stab at my ears. Music rattles my bones. Sarah's in the kitchen, talking to you. Rhubarb, 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 blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah. Rhubarb? Blah? Your words drown in a whirlpool of sound. Tonight we went to a party. Now we're walking home, turning left by the pub. My bones still shudder, my ears still bleed. You're talking to me. Gabble, 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 gabble. What did you say? After drawn out silent moments, I process your words. Yes, thank you so much. I had a wonderful time. Tonight, I wish I hadn't gone to a party. I would have understood the crackling flames and the quiet turn of pages. Thank you. I'm actually reading that one off the page and later this week, and it's going to be interesting to see if it works without having the words just appearing when they're when they're meant to appear. Anyway, back to menu. Right, conversations with a psychiatrist. This is another interactive one. If any of you have ever been to see a psychiatrist, you will understand the feeling behind this. They ask ridiculous questions, take no notice whatsoever of your answers. So, the first question they ask is, how are you feeling today? How do I reply? Do I reply, the night was unusually dark? Or why do you always ask that? Or I can't carry the despair?
Why do you always ask that?
Okay. Why do you always ask that? My mind is liquid. There is nothing to keep it inside my skull. How can I know which feelings are leaking out? Can't you see them? What colour are they? How quickly do they drip from my ears? What does the psychiatrist ask next? Why does pain sparkle? What are you afraid of? Or how important is light to you? Light to you. How do I reply? I'm going to say when all the light bulbs are broken, because there's a specific reason for that one. When all the light bulbs are broken by careless stones, importance is irrelevant. Everything is pieces of itself, and there is no broom big enough, not even my mother's yard broom, to sweep it all up. That's where the title of the collection came from, so I wanted to read that. Okay, so what does the psychiatrist ask next?
What are you afraid of?
Okay, what are you afraid of? And how do I reply? Fear is so far behind me, I need to be chilled, I'm overflowing with fear. Okay. I'm overflowing with fear. It twists my thoughts, deposits jagged rocks to snag and slash me as I whirl, fear full, out of control. Fear leaks out of me, blended grayscale images from way back when and yet to be. At this point, I've had enough of this, I leave the room. I've got one final one. Teenage poetry, teenage mothers and daughters, anyone sort of remember how the relationships go? Okay, so it's not quite. So theoretically the left hand side's my mum and the other side is me. So I'll read my mum's side first. Yes, I'd love to read your poems. I never wanted you to be a scientist. All I want is for you to be happy. By the way, where's my cooking brandy gone? You won't be able to sunbathe when you're older. Your skin was so smooth on the day you were born. Why do you do it? Tell me, just tell me, why do you do it? It's time I went to work. We can talk later. I can't stand to see your bloody arms. And then my side, I want to walk the boundary with you. Tell me how to distill invisible tears. Happiness is liquid and my skull has leaks. I'm a 15-year-old drunk just seeking attention. I'm old and rutted like the lanes we once walked. I've foot slogged down them far too long now. The first time you shout at me is about this. Shame hacks its way through my false skin. What should I do till the off-licence opens? You should know how to keep me from harm. Okay, so I'm going to talk to each other. I had so much fun coding this. Don't give up. You're not listening. And then try communicating. We'll deckle the edges of all the words and paint each other's invisible tears. We'll order an emergency skull repair kit and watch the bubbles burst together. We can walk side by side between bronzed hedgerows and repair ruts and potholes as we go. Talking at each other won't break down walls or help us soothe each other's shame. Let's clear out the bottles from under the bed and place them gently in the bin. Thank you. It's back to Sonja now. That's me done. I'm going to sit here actually because standing up's doing my back in. If you don't don't mind.
So, this poem is called F0 equals F1 equals 1, Fn plus 1 equals Fn plus Fn minus 1, where n is in the natural numbers, which is the Fibonacci sequence. Leaves blow in the wind. Snow falls. Branches bend under the weight of fractals. Water drips. Randomness trickles down a leaf. Buds grow, tightly packed in spirals until they unfurl and empty their perfume into the world. Artists flock, gather the flowers, draw, paint, copy their proportions. Gardeners stand watch in the night, waiting for the snail shells to emerge. Until again the seasons change. The smell of rot wrinkles the nose. Decaying fruit is washed clean by a downpour. Leaves skitter. Frost edges across the ground, all abiding a hidden rule. Fn plus 1 equals Fn plus Fn minus 1. Thank you. And this is another sort of naturey poem, except it's really about maths. 6 log x plus 1. I walked between trees, their branches silently swaying in the wind. Then there was a log, the base of a tree with base 10. Deep in the forest, somewhere another tree began to creak. I could almost see it begin to fall, groaning as the wind picked up. Finally crashing to the ground in a mass of twigs, leaves, and scattering birds, as though following a hidden multiplication law for logs. I saw the forest in years' time, a mass of logs or bases, where some had split, cracked, and splintered in two, divided by the laws of logs. But the forest was still alive and green around me. Above me, an oak tree had reached out its hands, the mightiest of trees stretching out its grip as far as possible. The log at my feet was insignificant and ivy-covered in comparison. But not all logs were like that. By the power laws, some of them seemed great as well, and I walked on. Almost tripping over something covered in moss and mushrooms, its rings could hardly be identified. It was clearly a natural log, base E. I looked down at mushroom sprouting, growing, pushing its way up through decaying leaves and bracken. Suddenly it was over. The forest collapsed in around me. The trees fell and disintegrated. Nothing more than the logs were left. Graphs that reached out to infinity, where positive integers were sucked in and negatives were cast out. Then as decimals joined in the inputs, negative numbers were allowed to stay as products. With a jolt, the logs disappeared, returning to index form. The logarithms were gone. Only one remains, here, inside this poem. 6 log x plus 1. Thank you. This poem is a warning. It's called f of x equals 100 times mod x minus 30. Dividing by 0 is like paying in a shop with some monopoly money. It's like writing an English essay in Cantonese. It's like spitting chewing gum in someone's face, like driving 10 miles an hour on the motorway. It's like putting your head under water for 10 minutes, like trying to climb the very thin branches at the top of a tree. Like lighting a firework in your room, pouring acid in your eye, placing your hands inside a hydraulic press, jumping off a 12-story building without a parachute, playing catch with knives, toasting to friends with bleach, dropping a time bomb under your pillow, making the world explode. Everything will spontaneously combust and not even leave ash behind. It will demolish reality and collapse the universe and all universes beyond. Never divide by 0, nothing, or naught. That's not the next poem I've got here, but okay, we'll skip that one. This next poem is called 2x squared minus 32x plus 128 equals 0, the answer to which, as you can see there, is 8. Or equations. They flap in the wind, equations snagged on trees, all discarded, like old plastic bags full of holes. They blow and bump across the road, are lifted into the air for a moment, turn before they're stepped into a muddy puddle, with the iridescent twists of petrol swirling about on top. They will take an eternity to be decomposed, forgotten. Who needs equations anymore? They do not alter anything, just sum up a fraction of the universe in a few symbols. They flap in the wind, equations snagged on trees, all discarded. Thank you. This poem is a sort of sestina, except it only has 3 lines and 3 words that repeat, and they repeat in all the different ways you could move an equilateral triangle about. That makes any sort of sense. It's called Permutations of the Equilateral Triangle. Pen in hand, you draw a triangle. Immediately they form. Crouching ready, I rub the shape out before I see the permutation finish. You wave me away. They watch. Forming an action, they dance with their symmetry group. I try to step on their toes. You dash in a line of reflection. You wait for the product to continue. They do not keep you waiting. I get my rubber at the ready. They are too fast. I can hardly see their orbits at all. You laugh as the group changes. I watch too. You doodle in a homomorphism. They form a calligraph. You are delighted by the symmetry. They beckon. I grab the back of your collar. They move again. You pull at an isomorphism. I watch warily. You lean in closer. They are faithful. I still try to rub them out. I try to keep them still. They act on, oblivious. Then you fall. You flounder in the group. They drag you under. I let the rubber fall from my hand. You are trapped. I can do nothing. They are free, but you are not. Returning to the identity, they laugh. I couldn't help, could I? And this next poem is the last one of the evening. It's called Aleph Naught, or Countable Infinity. Start to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Move on to your other hand. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then toes. Move on to beads. Count a number every second. 60 in a minute. 3,600 in an hour. 86,400 in a day. 1,209,600 in a fortnight. Keep counting. 31,555,926. And carry on. On and on. 1,893,415,560 after 60 years of counting. Don't stop, don't take a breath. After 120 years, you've said 3,786,831,120 integers, but there are still so many more to count. So continue on and on and on. Reach 307,648,471,574 and continue. On and on and on. A number a second, every second, as the world changes around you. Just keep saying numbers. On and on and on and on and on. The ice caps melt away. The sun begins to expand. Tornadoes and tsunamis roam across the earth. There is no one left to experience the earth's destruction. 2,726,518,406,400. For a time, the sun hangs in space. As a red giant, cold and ready to implode. Keep counting. On and on and on and on and on. Bang! Supernova. The solar system is burnt down to atomic level. 9,088,294,688,000,000. On and on and on and on and on and on you count, as the atoms float in space, waiting for gravity to take hold once more, to drag them back into a ball, set them alight and fuse new elements together. Time continues. On and on and on and on and on and on. New planets are born. Against all the odds, life develops. Cells multiply, adopt specific functions, facilitate thought beyond survival. And still you count. On and on and on and on and on and on. The new sun ages. Its stable state begins to come to an end in a supernova of extraordinary light. The cycle begins again. On you count, digit after digit, never missing a beat, as time continues all around you, till after many life cycles, supernovas and dead and empty planets, time has run its course. It stops, and finally you stop too. You've reached the last digit. All the positive numbers have been said, and your task is complete. Countable infinity has been counted, all Aleph Naught of its numbers said, for no one to hear them. Thank you.
That's amazing. This is clever poetry. Mine's just fancy poetry. I don't know if anyone's got any questions or thoughts or ideas that they wanted to talk about. Quite happy to take questions or feedback.
I'm fascinated by how you actually constructed your poems to work in the way they did on the screen, like the poem, the very first poem you read about the Russian doll. How you went in and were you using PowerPoint or was it all coded?
Oh no, it's all coded.
All coded.
It's using, you know, the text adventure games you get where it describes a scene and you say go to the next. It's using a framework that supports that,
Right.
along with lots of style sheets and JavaScript programming and some bits of Twine programming and stuff.
Wow.
I used to be a software developer many years ago, and it's kind of fun to get back to it actually.
Yeah, in a creative way like that.
Yeah.
Really interesting, thank you.
I guess coming off of that, maybe a question for both of you, just thinking about sort of structure and form, how they inform the poems in different ways, like with the coding and then with maybe the influence of math.
Yeah, so I don't normally mention it, but most of my poems have, like, the formula in the title has some sort of relevance. So that obviously doesn't have a formula, neither does that one really. But that one, the answer is 8, so it has 8 syllables a line. This one, if you put like 1, 2, 3, you will get numbers that increase, and each, like the number of syllables per line follows that formula. Same with that one. That one, it's the number of syllables a stanza because the numbers get big too quickly. That one, it's the numbers of E, so it goes 2.7182, on and on and on. That one's 8 because its imaginary part of that formula is 8. That one, if you keep putting the next prime number in the sequence into that, you get a very odd sequence of numbers, which I think is the numbers per stanza, if I remember rightly, rather than per line. I can't quite remember. And yeah, they're mostly all like that. There's just a few examples.
I'm absolutely in awe of that. I can never get syllabic poems to work properly, but
It just involves lots of finger counting.
yeah, true.
Just.
I think I start with a sort of idea of a way of doing things, and then think about how that would fit with the words that I want to write, and then kind of tweak them until they come together. So things like the depression inventory, which you missed unfortunately, but I don't know if you know about the questionnaires they give you when you go to the GP and say, oh God, I'm depressed. I've written my own version of that. That's kind of an obvious one to do, and it's an obvious one to do with coding as well, because you know, you select different answers and then if you put those together you can actually make a poem out of it. And really I came at it from what can you do with text on the screen that you can't do with text on the page. So you can make it random, you can make it move, you can make it get bigger and smaller, you can make it ephemeral so you'll never see the same poem again. And then how that fit in with the ideas that I was wanting to write about at the time, mostly, but then over the last couple of weeks I've taken a couple of my 3, I think, of my page poems and thought I could actually do something really interesting with those on screen as well. So it's kind of, I don't know, is the answer.
Thank you very much.
But yeah, it's fun. It's basically playing with another way of playing with words that's, I don't know, different.
I was going to say I found the 2 poems with the random changes between them quite fascinating, because that kind of opens up so many different possibilities when you're writing a poem and editing it. How do you actually choose those options between words and phrases?
Yeah, and you don't have to if it changes from one to the other.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
quite, and I actually watch that one quite often myself, just to see what new combinations of words it's going to come up with. I mean, it's quite often, like maybe 2 or 3 times a year, but you know, because it's new to me as well, even though I wrote the words, and it's brilliant fun.
So in each case you've just got 2 options, or you've
Yeah.
got multiple options? Yeah,
Just
you've
2.
just got 2 options.
Yeah, I've written other ones where the reader can actually choose the word in each place, and I offer some options, and then the reader can type in their own word if they want to. So that's a poem with infinite possibilities, that one. I won't show you now because I don't think it actually is working at the moment, but yeah, I mean, the user interaction side of it is also fun because it's reader interaction, and you know, you can sort of get yourself lost in a poem rather than reading it again and again, reading a slightly different version of it. And
Pretty much you're making the poem.
Yeah.
In writing Black Sense, you know, the poem and you are coming together, and you're making a new poem through that.
yeah, it's reading is a really active process, which is good.
Can I ask Sonja about your fascination with maths? When did that start? When you were very, very young, or?
I wouldn't say that. I've always been fairly good at maths. I started writing mathematical poetry when I was in college. There was a prompt to write one of those mirror poems, you know, where you can read it the same way backwards and forwards. And for some reason, I wrote it about maths. I've literally no idea why. And then someone was like, "Oh yeah, that's quite good. You should write more of those." And I realised I had ideas for them. And I studied English Lit and maths at uni, so that also helped. Yeah.
Works really well though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So impressed.
Another question for you, if that's okay. When you're including mathematical ideas and language and equations in your poems, are you writing with a specific audience who understands it, or are you thinking of the mathematics as kind of an extra layer?
I'm thinking of it as an extra layer. I mean, quite a lot of these I wrote as my dissertation, like my sort of portfolio of original literary work at the end of uni, which I knew would be marked by a bunch of poetry lecturers. I mean, I did include footnotes of like, these are all the maths words. I'm not just using random words. But yeah, I don't particularly expect my audience to get it. I mean, quite a lot of them are just fun words. Like, functions have arguments. Isn't that just brilliant?
Yeah, natural logs and base 10 logs and things like that. Yeah.
Your enthusiasm for maths really come over really well. It's really powerful.
I have a question about the poem Pi.
Yeah.
Is there a particular relation between each verse and the number behind it?
So yeah. Yeah, where's pi gone? It's ahead for this one. Pi. So, if you count syllables, right here pi, 3 is 1. Following you, 4, 1. You can keep doing that.
Yeah.
So each syllable is the number of the next digit of pi along, basically. And I decided, this is a rewrite of a poem I wrote quite a long time ago, and back then I decided to put all the numbers in. And I thought it's actually makes for interesting reading. I'm still not quite sure how to read it out loud, to be honest. It's quite hard work to keep the flow of the words while putting the numbers in.
Sonja, have you thought about doing it for 2 voices?
Yeah, but I don't know how I'd need to co-op a person.
It'd need a lot of practice, I should think,
Yeah,
to get it
and
to sound
practice
right.
as well.
But I think it'd be worth it. I like the way you read it, actually, because you did manage to make the numbers just sort of slip in among the words. So that worked really well.
That's how that one.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming along, everyone. It's been so nice to have people in the bookshop again and doing an event here. It's really exciting. Thank you. Thank you. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the Poetry Festival, because there's an awful lot more of it going on and more events to see.
Oh,
Here.
yes, she was my English teacher.
I beg your pardon, sorry.
Yes,
When
I
is
mean,
it?
I've-
Wednesday. We've got an online poetry event on Wednesday.
I mean, I don't
We've
think
got
there are many other mathematical
a
poets
live
that have
streamed
come out of
event
Dilbert,
on
so yes,
Tuesday,
it's sure to be
which
me.
is the launch of Feminist Book Fortnight, which will be in the shop. But the
Yes,
online
it got
poetry
published
event
in
is
some random book. I'd
Wednesday.
completely forgotten about that.
Yes,
Those
Wednesday,
are like the
definitely.
early embarrassing ones that don't read anymore.
Sorry, auditory processing disorder.
How do we log into that?
Sorry.
How do we get from?
If you look on our website, on our events page, you can register for it. It's free. You just need to register via Eventbrite and you'll get the link. But that'll be a good one, because that's I think there's going to be 29 of us, possibly only 28 neurodivergent poets, all reading from an anthology that we were all published in.
Normally, like rank maths
And there's some
classrooms, you
amazing
have
poetry
number
in there,
lines, don't you? So
just
you
to
have
prove
0
that
here, you have
autistic
1, you have
people
2,
do
you have
understand
3,
metaphors and
you
do
have
do
-1,
imagery.
you have -2, blah blah blah.
But
So the
yeah,
Argand diagram
be nice to
is
see
a
you
way
there. Well,
to
I won't see you
include
there, but
imaginary numbers
it'd be
in
nice
this
if you were
diagram.
there.
So you now have I here, you have 2I here,
Thank
you
you.
have 3I here, and then you have -I and -2I and -3I, and kind of through this diagram you can express any complex number. So you can kind of, you can plot them, and it's really a visual way of seeing numbers, because you can see it as a, thank you, as a coordinate like this, but you could also see it as a line to here, like that. So it's sort of, yeah, so that's what an Argand diagram is. No. Go speak to a publisher. How did you find out about it, by the way? Where did you?
I just saw it on one,
Wow.
and then randomly saw your name on it.
'Cause I didn't. Yeah. Sorry, I know him through Extinction Rebellion, and I was like, didn't advertise that, but.
I was well.